In the OTTRED Spotlight series, I've been lucky enough to speak to some amazing people from all over the planet when it comes to the jobs that they've done, the lives that they've led, the lessons that they've learned, and the opportunity to bring the complexion of all of those things to the audience of the OTTRED Spotlight podcast. I'm really, really pleased today to be sitting in Studio Red at the Radisson Red Dubai Silicon Oasis with Amir Mortezaie. Amir is somebody whose story is going to arrest you. It's going to make you smile, and it's going to make you realize that this guy has got an incredible story, both personally and some of the projects that he's been involved in professionally have changed the landscape of the digital consumption arena here in the Middle East. Amir, I'm looking forward to our conversation, buddy.
Thank you so much. What an intro.
There you go. You didn't know I was going to do that.
Put me so high up.
You didn't know I was going to do that.
I need a parachute to come down.
Well, listen, I didn't say anything that you don't deserve, buddy.
Oh, thank you very much.
I always like to start by giving our guest on the Spotlight podcast the opportunity to kind of give a high-level overview of what your career has been. We're going to talk about other stuff, personal, professional, your potential. But for people that don't know you, and for people watching on the LinkedIn Live or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just give them a familiarity with who you are and what you've done.
All right. So I'll start by my telco experience. That's predominantly where my background is. I'm a telco expert at core. This is where I started. My career started in Denmark, where we started to work with France Telecom, setting up their one of their mobile operators called Orange Denmark, and then later moved to become Telia when they sold it off. But I stayed with France Telecom Group for about 7 years, working in different sections, research and development, consulting, and that kind of gave me exposure to a lot of technology and kind of domain that was not pure telco. And there was a marriage between internet services as internet was coming up and telco trying to bridge the gap in between, providing services. And some of those early services would be mundane today and something that we don't even think about. But consider the following: sending out an SMS to renew your parking ticket, for example, when you're parking and so on, to the RTA here. TRA. So, and that service of sending an SMS was something that was invented in Denmark, and something that our team basically sat down and started working. And there was a collaboration between Nokia, between the operator and France Telecom, and our team. Now, those kind of services, bridging the gap between internet and telcos and providing services to users, allowed me to get exposure to all this cool next generation bleeding edge stuff. And over the years, I've kind of basically taken that and grown with it. I've traveled around the world, in different parts of the world, doing the same kind of things. I was very lucky to work with some amazing people, learning and at the same time building some of the coolest things. I've been participating in building Mobilecom in Jordan, which is now called Orange Jordan, Orange Sweden, part of GSM Railway in France with Orange. Again, these are all part of the Orange and France Telecom stories. Then I started my own little shop, traveling around the world. I did work with STC, setting up their value-added services team. Again, some really talented people and colleagues. And the thing is that everywhere I went, I tried to bring in some of my friends and people that I've met over to different projects, because those expertise were so rare. So we ended up having a small community of people moving from one project from one country to another country.
When you find good people, keep them.
Exactly. That's really, really important, to maintain that kind of relationship and so on. It gives you also that drive to come up with new things. You have certain mindset that you can work with, and that's important. So after Saudi, I went to Africa. I've done Nigeria. I've done Algeria, Namibia. Insane. Such beautiful landscapes, and also culture and people. It's really, really different.
Yeah,
we would think. South Africa I've done, and then I started to slowly come into Middle East, working in UAE first with Etisalat, and then eventually over time And I stayed with Du for about 10 to 11 years. And after that, I kind of started my own shop a few years back, helping operators and service providers with their TV, specialized in TV. And eventually I migrated from pure telco to the kind of a more OTT and TV domain.
It's amazing, I think, Amir, the number of people, I'm from a telco background, and the number of people that you know and that I know mutually and then exclusively as well, where there is so many people that have got that career point of origin where it's telco, because essentially now OTT and media transmission is still around IP-based data transmission. So it kind of comes full circle. And I don't know about you, but personally, that's one of the things that I like about it, is that in the telco world, in that chapter of my career, I could never really see what the end service was. You just connect in speeds and feeds. But now, when you've got OTT and you've got Netflix and all these amazing movies and productions and, you know, and you see your kids watching them, you're like, that's the sector that I play in. That's what I do. Let's go, by the way, it kind of makes me smile inside. I'm sure my face was doing the same thing when you say that, you know, you're working on the Danish equivalent of being able to book parking with an SMS, and that was the bleeding edge of technology at that point. Let's fast forward a bit from that being the bleeding edge to when you came to Dubai and OTTRED and then Du. When was that? Was that kind of 2011, 2012?
So first time I came to Dubai, it was in year 2000. I was invited by His Highness to attend the opening of Dubai Internet City, the opening ceremony. It was insane. First time I came to the country, and I never forget this. I had never seen this many cranes, construction cranes, in my life. And at one point in time, I found out that at that time, about 25 to 30% of the cranes in the world were basically here in Dubai, being building all these high rises and buildings. Insane. I remember they took us to the event, and on the way to the event at Internet City, we passed by Burj Al Arab, and that was the only building there. There was Burj Al Arab, there was Jumeirah Beach Hotel, and nothing else. There was something called the Chicago Beach. So if you're being there that time back, there would be something called Chicago Beach, and there was a sand. That's it. There's nothing in between. And when you were going to Internet City, it felt you were going halfway to Abu Dhabi. So that was the first time I got here. It was an amazing event. I was like gobsmacked by this fireworks. The sheer size of the fireworks that I saw that night was insane. But Dubai is synonymous with everything being big. And I think, considering what I saw then to what we see today, that was small. And you can imagine what we are seeing today. So, but in between, I traveled a lot back and forth between UAE and other projects. But moving into UAE physically was in 2009, where I kind of established and I started working with.
So I always relate that kind of period of time, and this is why I'm fascinated and maybe envious in a mild way, of all of the people that I work with now, between that window at 2009 to maybe 2013, when streaming was being born as we recognize it today. You know, and you were in this region but you had all of this global experience. Europe, Africa, Middle East was beginning to blossom for you in your career. What was it like at that moment here in the Middle East?
There wasn't anything near to what we have today with regards to streaming services. In fact, it was non-existent. Streaming was not something that was common to anyone. Everyone knew something called mobile TV, a multi-screen and mobile TV. And that meant that when you were designing a web service, because that was the predominant number one way to go, you had to then design a kind of a functional way to get it to work on a mobile phone as well. So create a website that is mobile supported.
And what kind of mobile phones were there then? It wasn't the iPhones that we know now.
iPhone was just coming out. I mean, it came out, and even it was iPhone, the original one, then iPhone 3G and iPhone 3GS, and a Pebble Watch. It's like I actually invested in Pebble. Invested in Pebble. So there wasn't much of technology, and services didn't exist. So we had to consider of creating a kind of mobile TV, which was a companion service, but never did anyone think about how it would explode and how it would flourish until about 2012, where we started considering, hey, this mobile TV thing is not the way to go, but we need to actually create a proposition around proper TV services, streaming services, building a infrastructure that supports TV services for users, because UAE and the region is predominantly mobile compared to the rest of the world where everyone was web. We're going to do something on web and then convert it to mobile. Whereas here, we started to actually flip it around and work on mobile and make everything work on mobile first and mobile first approach, then web, because that's what makes sense.
So 2012, I think I was still using a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
That everyone was on BlackBerries. And I was quite gutted, I think, when BlackBerry stopped, because I'd learned how to type on a BlackBerry without even looking at it, the dexterity thing. But when you went to Do, or a Etisalat then, right? It was a Etisalat, Do first, right? When you went to Do, what was the vision? I mean, the world was evolving, it was blossoming, the internet was getting real traction and being able to be the provision mechanism for content onto lots of different devices. What were the conversations like? What were you involved with? And what was the application of what your knowledge before that moment had been to what Do was trying to create?
So what happened is that at the time, there wasn't a very clear strategy around a TV service. If we're talking about TV in general, at the time, Do was struggling a lot with creating a digital identity, which was homogeneous across the board. And we're talking about the mobile and web experiences. And that was it. That was what they were looking at. How do we make things look good on the mobile, and how do we make things look good on the web? And we create a digital identity, a brand identity around that, make our self-care look good, create a Do app that allows people to pay, and up their prepaid services through that app, so that we improve the customer experience. Now, this is where things started to evolve a little bit, because I was part of fortunate enough to be part of a small team that was focusing on home services as well, right? And I need to give a shout out to my boss. I absolutely love this guy. He's one of the most amazing guys, and he doesn't know about this, so he might be surprised. Amir, which was the vice president of innovation at Do at the time, he basically was running innovation and home services at one point in time, and I was in part of that team. And I worked with Hassan Saad, so you know him. He worked on content, securing content, and Nov, which was working on partnerships. And essentially together, we kind of started looking into, hey, should we not start focusing on creating a clear TV and home services as well? So at the time, because I was deeply involved in creating the digital identity and the brand identity for Do, for the web and mobile spaces, we decided that let's extend this work with the agency that we're working with to cover home services and TV services. That's the first time ever we started to look into, hey, how are we going to do this? We literally started to go do anonymous meetings and customer surveys, go with the agency. I've been in homes of customers where they were talking about their services and their frustrations, the frustration about how things were working. Why was the set-top box too slow? Why the service was slow? Was the quality?
So at that point, Amir, were people taking linear services already from Do, or this is where they were already doing that,
yes.
Right?
Do was providing TV services, I think, since 2007 or 2008, maybe even earlier.
So you were looking at trying to evolve what the value of that set-top box was in people's homes.
Yes, and the service. Because what happens is, the happier a customer are, the lower the chances that they're going to move away.
Yeah.
And that's something that essentially was a thread of thought that people got from Apple. It's like, oh, let's make sure that we provide best-in-class services, best-in-class experience for customers to ensure that they stay. And once you do that, you realize customers or users don't mind to pay that little extra as long as they get that unique experience, that better experience compared to when ads.
I want to come back to that point, Amir, later, because I want to know what your opinion is about, fast forward to nowadays, the massive horizon of services that people can take. whether or not you agree with me that I think a lot of the direct-to-consumer front ends of those things are more or less exactly the same. And therefore, what the competitive margin is to be able to charge extra, what that's all about. Is it about niches? Is it about more innovation in the UI, etc.? But let's stay on this topic because this is the momentum of the story. So what did you start doing in the set-top boxes that started to allow the value that you're talking about to blossom?
So first thing we did after doing the customer surveys and understanding the customer behavior, with the limited amount of information that we had with regards to analytics, we started to change the entire UI. So we redesigned the user interface. Just simple things on ensuring that the right button is highlighted at the right place for upselling TVOD, or showing the right information about the program that a customer is watching. Those little changes make a significant impact in the day-to-day life of a user when you're searching for a program. So that's what we did. Quite literally did the most basic things to make the smallest changes, and eventually started to roll it out towards mobile and enhanced that. And we came out with a service called DoView at the time, which was the first of its kind in the region, where we started to do the so-called...
What was the reaction? What was the reaction from the market? So what did you anticipate and what happened?
We didn't anticipate that it would be as good as it was, but we were excited and we were a bit stressed because when we started to go big, I remember there was we did the application, we did the iOS, when we did the Android, and then we started roll it out to the PlayStation and Xbox. We were the first app in the Microsoft store in the region, which was providing TV, and we ended up enhancing it to Apple TV, which was creating a lot of ripple in the region. What's interesting is that we noticed the power of OTT and mobile when there was a big boxing match. Manny Pacquiao, I think his name is, and someone else. And that day we had about 500,000 active users for the first time on the service.
Right.
And that was a peak. It was insane.
When was that? What year was that roughly?
I think it was 2014, I believe it was.
So the population of Dubai now is 3 million.
Yeah.
It would have been a lot less then, and you had 500,000.
That was we had local, as in UAE, and then we started to, because the match was streamed, and I think it was free at the time, so free to air. So we basically put on a free to air. We started with people around the world basically using it. So the app had it over about 1.5 million download in terms of from the store. So it was insane, and people like what, and that kind of scared us because we were not thinking that we would be prepared.
In what way were you worried? Was it the topology, the servers, capacity?
The network. We didn't anticipate that we would be able to basically serve about 500,000 concurrent users coming into the service trying to watch this game or this show. Sorry, and it worked. Nothing happened. It didn't crash anyway. But I remember when it was happening, minute by minute, every one of us. Hassan, myself, Samir, everyone was like looking at the system, making sure. Our tech team, oh my God, these guys were basically shaking. It's going to crash. It's going to crash. And it didn't. And of course, that energy, that adrenaline that you get afterwards.
We did it.
I think it was like I was in that boxing match myself.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. But it was amazing. But that's when we knew very clearly there is a significant market opportunity here. In the region and in UAE with regards to streaming and OTT services. We were for sure certain that would be the case. Then we started to work on enhancing the services and coming up with newer versions of the applications and, of course, reaching its platform diversity.
What was tougher, launching the services and exploring that frontier when it was virgin territory, or once you had established that it was a valid, legitimate, market-worthy proposition and then working out how to enhance it? Which one of those was tougher?
Well, now having all the answers, I would say the second part. It would be maintaining it and keeping it going. Because what happened is that over the years, getting it to a launch point, because we had the support of management, it was good. It was something that they were looking for. They were looking for diversifying, and different revenue stream coming in to do, and also providing a better experience. But then afterwards, when it goes live, maintaining that continuous kind of evolution of the service and kind of exploiting the benefits became a problem.
Yeah.
And it's something that unfortunately not only but every operator in the region is suffering. Everyone has their streaming services, but they are not able to monetize it because over the years, of course, you had all the different players popping in. When they came into the region, and of course, when they kind of landed in the region, because they have the pull of the rest of the world, they got famous. Netflix, Disney, Amazon, they're coming in and they're taking all this share of the pie. And so the share of the pie gets smaller, so you need to be more niche. And the cost of licensing content for a small application in niche goes higher. And that becomes a bit of a difficult situation to balance. And
classic mass market product type scenario.
Exactly. And strategies and priorities change in operators. So unfortunately, something that I have to say is very, very difficult to maintain. Maintaining the operations and continuous good support is very, very difficult. It's something that we're all struggling with.
So you're at Do for a long time.
Yes, I was there about 12, 13 years because I actually started in the incubator at Do before I was Do, called NAU. And in NAU, we're building what we used to call 21st Century Digital Mall of Arabia, which was the first of its kind in the region. It was a hybrid of what you call it, Twitter, Facebook, Souk, Eurosport, news site, gaming, all of them hopped into one big web destination, mobile destination for the region, Pan-Arabic region, so MENA region. And it was an amazing idea. It was an amazing opportunity as an incubator, and Do was the main stakeholder in it. And eventually, when that venture and incubator came to an end, Do asked me to join them as full-time to run the experience for basically the digital team and so on. So I started that. Before myself, there wasn't a digital team at Do. There was a very small team of people working on branding, and those were guys that were predominantly focused on print.
Yeah.
And because, as you notice, there's no TV, there's nothing specific. There was mainly billboards by Do before then. So
that's kind of crazy when you think about that, how important the digital teams are in every business now, not just tech businesses.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue every business is a tech business now. So you're at Do, you were there for a long time.
Yeah.
Then you went to Etisalat.
No. Etisalat was actually a few years before.
Okay.
And I did Etisalat as part of an audit. So Etisalat engaged a company called LCC, which I was one of the senior consultants for. The issue with Etisalat was that at the time, I believe the CEO or chairman was living in Sharjah, and every day he was driving between Sharjah and Abu Dhabi. Oh. And there was a problem with basically the experience because his calls were being dropped. And he was trying to get these call drops fixed because he was very frustrated. Early in the morning on the call, and calls drop. Early and late in the afternoon. In fact, I can tell you exactly the location. You know, the bridge where you cross the Media City, and there is and you're driving towards Palm.
Yeah.
There's a gas station. If you pass that at 5 o'clock in the evening, almost, I can fairly say, 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the evening, your phone calls will drop systematically. Okay, it's like, and that is because the network was not dimensioned properly at the time. Yeah. So they engaged LCC to do a network audit. And as part of that audit, I ran the audit for Etisalat's value-added services network, looking at all the services, product and services they were doing, whether it was SMS, WAP, if you're familiar with WAP, wireless application program.
I haven't heard that for ages.
WAP. Yeah, WAP. Voicemail systems, they're prepaid, the billing system mediation. So we found out, for example, there was during the audit that there was a kind of a misconfiguration, so to say. And their do you remember MMS, multimedia services? All right, so. And they were literally losing millions because they were not capturing the right parameters, and messages were being lost, and people were being very frustrated that I'm sending this video message, but it never goes through. I remember
when you used to get a text message saying to download this picture.
Download this picture. It's like nothing happens. Exactly. And those were the days. And can you imagine where we were and where we are today? So this is so far. I mean, it feels so far away, but it's not that far.
It's only a decade ago.
A decade ago, we were basically struggling to download pictures onto our phones, whereas now we don't even think about it. And my kids is like, without internet, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like literally the moment there's something is not working.
Well, my kid, Alfie, he's 4 years old. He will happily, very fluently, do a FaceTime call with his nanny in London. Yeah. You know, it's normal to them. There's so many examples of things that I think about where I'm like, if I tell my kids that, for example, that we used to take a roll of film into a pharmacy to get it developed, they're going to be like, you what? You know,
that with my daughter, I gave her a camera, one of these one-time use cameras, a couple of years ago, where she was graduating for a graduate. I said, take this and take pictures. And she took it. And
what is it?
I was like, what is it? And I kind of explained. I was like, okay. And the film was not developed for 2 years later because she didn't know what to do. She asked us to do it. So we had to go find a photo store, which would basically take it. And it took a week, whereas before it was 1 hour. You would deliver the film, the camera, and it will take you 1 hour to deliver those Kodak moments. Oh my God.
Unbelievable. So let's fast forward to now.
Yeah.
When you look at the market now, what do you think?
So the market in regards to
OTT.
All right. So clearly there is an abundant number of new players in the market. And it goes without saying. Content is still king. Everyone says it. Everyone's been saying it for decades, and they will continue saying it. But what they're not saying is who's the queen. And the queen is the experience. If you notice, there is a significant number of players out there, but they are all struggling with one thing.
Content is king, but the queen is experience. Exactly. We all know who runs every family, really. It's the queen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the experience is not about what it looks like. The experience is about being able to identify, find, and consume content that you want at the time that you want when you need it. Yeah. This is really, really important. That's why Netflix is spending millions and millions trying to hire data scientists, specialists in finding ways to optimize the discovery of the content. To be able to promote the right content at the right time, to be able to put that content at the right place on the screen is the next big thing.
You know, I think on this topic, Amir, tell me if you agree or disagree. Whoever discovers how to do that next will feel to the world like the next big thing.
Yes.
Because it's going to transform that interactive experience that people have with the kind of cascade tiles display that everyone's got at the moment, categories, different, you know, what you last watched. I personally believe that the innovation, the gateway that we're all looking for into the next chapter, the main one is that.
This is very true. I agree. I tend to agree with that. Absolutely. We are currently at a phase where there is an abundant number of players out there. There is a massive pool of content. A few years ago, Netflix had over 40,000 titles. 40,000 titles. But you look at your TV screen, or even, you know, closer. They have the 10-foot experience, which is your TV screen. You have a 1-foot experience, which is basically your mobile. All right, and this is the real estate we're talking about. This small thing, or that there's a certain finite amount of space, and that real estate needs to be used optimally to be able to promote the right product and right content, whether it is live TV, linear, or whether it is TVOD, AVOD, whatever it might be that you want to promote. And that is where everyone's struggling right now. And it's really difficult to find the right formula. And as you said, very rightly, the one who finds it is going to basically hit the gold mine.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because something around what that's going to look like has without a doubt got a relationship to all of the data. The data repositories that exist now are massive. They're massive. And you mentioned data scientists that Netflix are employing. You know, you can think of any of the big platform providers as well, Endeavor Streaming, Bedrock, Cinemedia, blah, 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 all of these, all in the same boat. It's like, what does that data tell us? How do we get a lens at that data that reveals the gem that we're looking for?
Yes.
I think everyone's trying to do that.
Everyone's trying to do that. And this is, if you recall earlier, I said when we did our study at the beginning, with the limited amount of information we had with regards to customer behavior. We spoke to customers, we went and had the interviews, the one-on-ones around UAE and talking to them and see how they experience the TV service. But we also looked at what we had in terms of parameters and metrics and KPIs with regards to what and how we serve it. What are they actually consuming? And we quickly realized there was no analytics. Back then, there were analytics companies, but there wasn't anything specific that said, this is the top 10 channel. If you're in broadcasting, yes, because that's your bread and butter. But when you're a telco, you don't have that in your streaming services. This is something and most operators currently are suffering from as well. They don't have the right analytics tool. And when they have the analytics tool, they don't have the right know-how to actually harness that data from those big lake data that they're collecting. Once you know that, and once you're able to harness that information and basically come up with a proper information about how things are consumed, how they're behaving, how does your video service behave, and how consumers are interacting with it, then you'll be able to then use that information to then come back and say, you know what, maybe channel XYZ is not the most popular one, all right? Maybe channel X is, and I need to put that channel in placeholder number 1 instead of placeholder number 10, because that's the one people are interested in.
I agree. Do you know, I think is the single most antiquated element of how you interact with OTT platforms now. Mm-hmm. I don't know how long Alexa and Siri have been going for, but I've used Siri for years. Mm-hmm. I do voice to text. If I want to convert currencies, I don't go on to xe.com anymore. I just ask Siri, hey Siri, how much is this in pounds or dollars or Indian rupees, whatever. Siri is like my second best mate. And there's Siri. She's always listening. Here's what I'm amazed at. I'm amazed that nobody's made an OTT platform yet that is what I would call personified. That you can, as far as I'm aware, it might exist. I don't know about it.
There is a lot of companies working on it. At IBC, I had the pleasure of seeing a small but upcoming company, which is really, really good. They're working on this. I'm not going to name them because I don't think it's a good idea to do product placement. Yeah. But the trend is quite literally using AI, trying to create and understand natural language and process that and come up with recommendation. That does work. I've used AI and I use AI, ChatGPT, everyone's go there and uses it, but you need to know how to prompt it. Yeah. And once you know that, once you start actually using that natural language processing, then you'll be able to harness the data and mine the data much faster. Yeah. This company was basically, it surprised me a lot because they made the demo for me and I thought, oh, okay, but this is a closed demo. And then he said, no, you talk to it. You start talking. And I spoke to it in English and he came back with the proper response. But I said, but it's only in English. He said, no. And they said, you can speak in Swedish. And I was like, okay. So I randomly asked for the most popular content in Sweden in this town at the current time, what we did the show that I should be watching. And he came back, understood everything in real time in Swedish, translated it, came back and gave me the recommendations. This is what people are currently watching in your hometown, in Malmo, right now. This is the most popular. So based on your request, we think this is what you should be watching. Yeah. And it was fairly accurate and real time and fast. And that's very important because there is this thing, there is a notion of you pick up the remote control and you ask, like you ask Siri, even if you ask Siri or Alexa, that the problem we currently are having is that you ask the question. First of all, it's not natural. Not everybody speaks English in the same way. And the unifying language for all these things are currently English, even if there is localized version, whether it is Arabic.
Well, Sky TV do it in the UK, I do it on Sky. Yeah.
But it still needs time to think. So that's the part. It's not instant. As a user, See, one of the strengths of what you have on your, and I love this, making this example, is that between Apple and an Android device, is that when you touch the screen, it instantly turns on because it knows that you touched it. Whereas in Android, you tap the screen and sometimes you need to tap again and sometimes, and it's not consistent. Sometimes it comes instantly, sometimes it comes later. As a user, you want to have instant gratification. So saying something and waiting for it to happen. And by the way, when you say something like, I'm looking for a cheeseburger, and it comes back with cheesecake, like, that wasn't what
you don't want to use it again next time.
Even Siri, with all its might and power, it's still lacking. I said, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right.
Again? I was like, okay, that wasn't what I... And that's something that I'm hoping is going to change and improve. And it's going to do that. The neural networks that these guys are building is making it faster and faster and more reliable. So hopefully that's where we're going to get.
Let's talk about another product.
Let's do that.
Let's talk about you.
Oh.
You have had an amazing career. You've done so much. You know, you've got technical depth, you've got commercial depth, you've been exposed to the consumer reality, you've been involved in what I would call setting sail, leaving the harbour when it comes to technologies that are now mainstream, you know. What has all that made you into? What are you at this point in your career?
That was a very deep question. Let me start by first saying one thing. It's very important to mention. I didn't get where I am with the experience I am without the help of others. So yes, I was involved in many things. I've done lucky enough to invent a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of services. But when I say it's because I'm here and having this conversation with you. But in reality, I've always been part of a team of people that has been helping, thinking alike, and building these services. So I need to make a shout out to all my friends and colleagues and people that have been basically supporting me, allowing me to learn from them and so on. But what it has made me into, that's a big...
if you were a product, what would it say on the tin?
Well, if you ask my kids, they would say technology. Every time anyone asks what your dad does, or you ask my wife what your husband does, technology. But it's so far beyond that. It's difficult. I would say that I'm a multi-passionate individual that knows a little bit about everything, but not everything about one thing, because that's a...
Can I stop you there, Amir?
Yeah.
Because I've known you for a while, and I think you're being very conservative there, saying you know a little bit about a lot of things. I think you know a lot. And I mean that, and it's a statement of fact.
Thank you.
It is a compliment, and I hope it's received like that, but it's also a statement of fact. You know, I think the experience that you've got, the way that you are very fluent talking about technical stuff or commercial stuff, or the interpretation of what the blend of those things means in public domain or private usage context. You know, like, I guess where I'm going to with this is, when you've got somebody like you, and there's a handful of people like you around the world, right? I consider myself lucky to know a few people like this. But with where this industry's going, how does an organization find the right kind of space to embrace all of that stuff you've got to offer? Is it a program director type position? Is it a CTO position? You know, what kind of stuff ignites you?
So, thank you. Again, you humble me. Thank you so much for saying that. It's really humbling to hear that. In an organization, whether it's telco or service-oriented, I would probably be within everything that has to do with product. So a chief product officer, where we look into how a product is designed. It's important to be able to gel the product vision and product strategy. And this is where I go in and look in a lot, and how a product and a service needs to look like, and how it basically connects to all the components within an operator or within a service provider. This is very important, because you have a technology team that purely focuses on how a technology is built, whether it is resilient, whether it is the best encryption, whether it is the best encoding, how does CDN work. This is great. This is absolutely core to making sure that you have a stable, reliable service. But a stable, reliable service that is not connected to marketing requirement and commercial requirements. How much we're going to sell it for? What is our marketing and targeted segmented group? So this quite literally means that you have to have a product individual where basically glues all of these things together, where basically you have the corporate strategy and vision, and that vision needs to be then...
So it's product leadership.
Product leadership.
Here's a question for you then. Is product leadership an art or a science?
I think it's a combination of both. You cannot do one without the other. It's an art because you need to envision, literally design something that maybe has not been done before, or in a very good example, an arcane example, Google. Google didn't invent search. What they did is that they reinvented it. They optimized it. And that is a product, all right? And this is our day-to-day life. We went from Yahoo search, Excite, and all these things to what we have today, where there's only one line. Yeah. And that just doesn't happen. And that happens based on partly art, understanding how people work, and design to that. And then the science part, which is essentially basing everything on metrics, understanding and trying to measure and continuously optimize. So a kind of an agile cycle of trying to improve your product based on actual fact and data.
It makes a lot of sense. You know, it sounds like it stacks up. It's a good perspective, and you get quite excited when you talk about that Google anecdote. Actually, would it excite you in the next chapter of your life and your career and your progress to be involved with that kind of renaissance? You know, you were involved at the beginning of services in this part of the world and many others. You've seen it evolve and blossom and become what it is today. It's going to become something else, right? Because as you said, everything that we've talked about today happened more or less within the last decade.
Yes.
It's going to be something probably within the next 12 or 24 months. Do you still get that feeling in the morning of being excited about, I want to be part of that?
Every morning I get up and I'm thinking, today is going to be another day where we're going to do something really cool. Working with new ideas and concepts. There are so many different new things that we can do. I love Apple, but you have Vision and Vision Pro, which is the next thing.
Yeah.
Just because you have a device, it doesn't mean that it will work like that. All right. You need to design the right experiences around it. So Apple has created this beautiful framework that you can build around and an ecosystem that you can flourish in. But if you don't have the right experience around it, then you're going to flop, and it's going to basically not. That's why they're very picky on what services go on it, when they go on it, and so on. In the region, we are blessed with the fact that the leadership of the country wants to move things at a huge and fast pace forward, meaning that there's always support, whether it is private companies or government institute. There is always support to push to the next barrier and push through to the next barrier. And finding those ideas and identifying them is not that hard, but implementing them and getting them through to the finish line is another story altogether. And that takes perseverance and, of course, optimism, waking up and saying, we can do this. This is something we can get going and get done.
I guess that's where the equity of the experience that somebody like you that's had the career that you've had comes into play. Final question, Amir. If you could give the younger you a piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say what Steve Jobs said. I would say he said, stay foolish, stay hungry. Brilliant. That's what I would say. I would absolutely say he's hero.
Enjoy being foolish, huh?
Yeah.
Listen, it's been amazing to talk to you. I said to you before we started to film this that I love the complexion of your career. I like the personality that you've got, Amir. You know so many people who I know as well, and they speak so highly of you. The equity of your reputation is extremely high.
Thank you, everybody.
Over the last 45 minutes, I think we've learned why. So, Amir, thank you so much for being a guest on the OTTRED Spotlight podcast.
Thank you for having me here. It was exciting and nervous and exciting. I was like that kind of adrenaline that I love.
It's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Amir.